Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, after hours of being deposed, Hillary Clinton comes before cameras.
We returned to answer questions repetitively, literally over and over again. I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein.
Hillary Clinton's deposition. The former Secretary of State testifies in the House Jeffrey Epstein investigation, accusing Republicans of protecting, quote, one political party and one public official.
I'm Rachel Scott here in Chappaqua, where that deposition took place. Just behind me, I'll have more details on what happened inside and why it suddenly stopped.
The U.S. investigates that deadly shootout. 4 people on that speedboat killed, 6 wounded. The Cuban government has accused them of terrorism. They say all 10 were Cubans living in the U.S. And tonight, we're learning what Cuban authorities say they found on board. The protests at Columbia University after Homeland Security arrested a student accusing her of being in the U.S. illegally. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani helps to secure her release after it was all smiles at a last-minute meeting at the White House with President Trump.
I'm in panel in Tel Aviv, tracking those high-stakes talks between the U.S. and Iran. Are they any closer to making a deal?
Back here at home, the new winter storm heading east. More snow in the forecast for areas still recovering from that massive blizzard. A chairlift scare at a popular ski resort. How this terrifying situation came to a close. For nearly 60 years, you've not been allowed to have a gun and use cannabis. Our Devin Dwyer has a look at a high-stakes Supreme Court case.
As of right now, I have 0 firearms.
And why is that?
I could serve 10 years in prison for having a firearm because I am, according to the feds, an illegal user of marijuana.
And this Black History Month, meet the LA street artist and philanthropist known for his murals, custom paintings, and sneakers.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're following breaking news, the conclusion of that months-long battle for Warner Brothers between Paramount and Netflix. But we do begin with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton emerging late today after more than 6 hours before a House panel investigating the Jeffrey Epstein case. Late today, Secretary Clinton stepped to the podium following the closed-door deposition. She remained defiant as she addressed the panel and called out Republicans for refusing to call President Trump to testify, saying if the committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would ask Trump directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files. Secretary Clinton accused Republicans of protecting, quote, one political party and one public official. Her deposition was also paused for a time. We're standing by to hear from a lawmaker who was in the room for the deposition. But first, our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott leads us off from Chappaqua, where the deposition took place.
Tonight, a defiant Hillary Clinton testifying for hours before the Republican-led House Oversight Committee investigating sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times.
The former Secretary of State, Senator, and First Lady denouncing the hearing as partisan political theater, calling it an abdication of duty and an insult to the American people. In a blistering opening statement, Clinton insisting she and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, were being forced to testify to distract attention from President Trump's actions and to cover them up despite legitimate calls for answers. And then she sat for hours of questions.
It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself.
Though they would not let Clinton testify in public, Republicans still looking for a political advantage.
Why did you send the picture? Why not?
Congresswoman Lauren Boebert secretly snapping this picture, sharing it with conservative influencer Benny Johnson, who then posted it online. The hearing briefly pausing before it resumed.
One of the members violated that rule, which was very upsetting because it suggested that they might violate other of our agreements.
Republican Chairman James Comer adding this.
The number of times that she said
I don't know. You'll have to ask my husband. Was more than a dozen.
Republicans were pushed to explain why they called Clinton to testify at all.
And we're not accusing Hillary Clinton of wrongdoing. We know that Jeffrey Epstein said many times in emails that he was the first person to raise money for the Clinton initiative. And again, that's not saying anything's illegal, but there are a lot of questions pertaining to Secretary Clinton.
But Republicans have refused to call President Trump to testify, despite his long friendship with Epstein. Clinton today making light of some of the questions they asked her.
It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs.
Clinton saying if the committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement. It would ask him directly, under oath, about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files.
Rachel Scott joins us now from Chappaqua, New York. So, Rachel, it's former President Clinton's turn to testify tomorrow. What can we expect then?
Yeah, so former President Bill Clinton will appear before lawmakers just behind me in this closed-door deposition, and we do expect the day to play out very much like it did today. Our cameras will not be allowed inside, though Republicans on the committee will have a camera there, and they say that that video will soon then be released to the public at some point. Democrats are calling for the transcript of these interviews to be made available to the American public within the next 24 hours, but both Republicans and Democrats saying that they are ready for the former president to arrive here tomorrow, Linsey.
All right, Rachel Forrest, thanks so much. And for more now, let's bring in Virginia Democratic Representative James Walkinshaw. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So you were inside the closed-door deposition today. Give us a sense of what it was like. Was there a lot of tension?
It was a long, tense day, and, it was a frustrating day for me because I don't think we learned a lot, not because Secretary Clinton wasn't open and honest. She answered every question that was asked, but she just doesn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell and the crimes they committed. She had sworn to that in a written statement in advance of the deposition. We knew that going in, and it was confirmed today.
Why did it take so long if she clearly didn't have or suggested she didn't have any information?
Well, there were months of good faith negotiation and back and forth between Secretary Clinton, the Clintons' lawyers, and the committee about, the terms of their participation. It's important to note that a number of other prominent individuals who, quite frankly, had a lot more information about Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes were not asked by Chairman Comer to answer questions in person. They were allowed to provide written responses to the questions that the committee had for them. So there's been a different standard for Secretary Clinton here, but I think she acquitted herself well today.
Walk us through the moment that a photo was shown and ultimately the hearing had to stop.
I don't want to violate the rules of the deposition myself and describe what happened in the room in detail, but it's been reported that a Republican member of the committee took a photo of Secretary Clinton and then shared that photo with a right-wing MAGA influencer. I think it highlighted the fact that there was unfortunately a political and partisan element to the proceedings today. We knew in advance that Secretary Clinton had no relationship with Epstein, had no significant relationship with Maxwell, never flew on the plane, never went to the island, wasn't involved in any of the crimes, and yet we brought her in today in front of all the cameras to answer questions, and then in violation of the rules, a photo was released from the deposition. So it was unfortunate. I give credit to Secretary Clinton for continuing with the deposition. Regardless of that incident, she would have been well within her rights to step back from the deposition at that point, given that the rules have been violated, but she carried on.
House Oversight Chair James Comer said today that it's very possible Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick could also be called to testify before the committee due to his ties to Epstein. Do you think that that's going to happen? If so, any idea on timing on that?
Well, I don't quite understand why Chairman Comer continues to qualify it and say that it might happen or it may happen or maybe it's on his list. He should just say we're going to do it. Democrats have called on Secretary Lutnick to come before the committee and testify. Chairman Comer has the power to make that happen. There's no reason that he shouldn't do it other than Donald Trump won't like it. And the important thing to know about Howard Lutnick, he lied about the depth and breadth and length of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So did his boss, Donald Trump. We know that there are many inconsistencies in the story Donald Trump has told publicly about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and the facts we now know from the files and other sources. So Trump and Lutnick are in similar circumstances. They lied to the American people, claimed to have a limited or no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and the files have revealed that they both have very, very significant relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. They should both come before our committee and answer questions about that.
Former President Bill Clinton is expected to testify tomorrow. What do you expect to hear from his deposition, and what questions do you have for him?
Well, President Clinton has been clear about the timeline of his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, the fact that through the Clinton Global Initiative, they used Jeffrey Epstein's plane to move from place to place. Clearly, there are pictures demonstrating that relationship between Clinton and Epstein. And I think President Clinton is in the same category as a lot of folks who had a relationship at some point with Jeffrey Epstein. The key questions for all of those folks are, were you involved in any of the crimes that were committed, or did you have knowledge of any of the crimes that were being committed? And I'm glad that President Clinton is coming before our committee tomorrow to answer questions, and I hope we can get to serious resolution of those key questions.
Congressman James Walkinshaw, thank you so much for your time. Tonight, in this crucial midterm election year, with Republicans holding very slim majorities in the House and the Senate, ABC News has learned that President Trump has reviewed a draft executive order that would involve him declaring a national emergency, potentially giving him sweeping power over voting in this country. There are serious questions tonight about the legality of any order. Let's get right to Mary Bruce at the White House. Mary, what have you learned?
Well, Lindsay, with the midterms fast approaching, as you mentioned, and Republicans holding those small majorities in the House and Senate, tonight we have learned that President Trump has reviewed this draft executive order, urging him to declare a national emergency that would then give him broad power over voting. Sources say a group of pro-Trump attorneys are circulating a draft claiming without evidence that China interfered in the 2020 election. They argue that that justifies then declaring a national emergency that would then allow the president to mandate voter ID, hand-counted ballots, and ban mail-in ballots. But it is not clear if the president is going to actually accept this proposal, though we do know that he is considering executive action to impose stricter voting rules. But, Lindsay, the Constitution gives states, not the federal government, the power to run elections. Lindsay.
Mary Bruce for us. Thanks so much, Mary. We also have breaking developments after that deadly gun battle involving Cuban forces and U.S. citizens in a speedboat off the coast of Cuba. What ABC News has now learned tonight about that boat. Here's our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, U.S. officials confirming that at least one of the 4 people shot and killed on that Florida speedboat off the coast of Cuba was a U.S. citizen, and one of the 6 people wounded, a second U.S. citizen. Police say the U.S. speedboat involved in the gun battle was reported stolen from this boat launch in the Florida Keys earlier this week. Cuba claiming the men were trying to infiltrate the island for terrorist purposes. The speedboat, according to the Cuban Ministry of Interior, reached within a nautical mile of the El Pino Channel when Cuban patrol boats approached the vessel. The Cubans claiming those on board the U.S. boat opened fire, prompting the Cubans to return fire. Cuba claims the suspects were armed with assault rifles, Molotov cocktails, and bulletproof vests, but provided no proof. The brother of a man he says was one of the boat's occupants, telling the Associated Press his brother had become obsessed with the quest for Cuba's freedom. The island nation is in the middle of a crippling energy crisis amid a U.S. quarantine of oil shipments. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Wednesday saying the U.S. will conduct its own investigation.
It is highly unusual to see shootouts in open sea like that. We're going to find out. We're not going to base our conclusions on what they've told us.
Martha joins us now. So, Martha, what else are we learning about some of the other people who were allegedly on that speedboat?
Well, Lindsay, some of them were lawful permanent residents of the U.S., but given that there was one American killed and another wounded, this is complicated for the State Department because police say the boat was stolen, and the Cubans say those men were heavily armed and fired on the Cuban troops first. Lindsay?
Martha Raddatz for us in the nation's capital. Martha, thank you. It appears the bidding war between Paramount and Netflix to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery is over. Warner Brothers today said its board of directors considered Paramount's latest offer superior to the deal it had with Netflix, giving the streaming giant 4 days to counter it. But Netflix says that it will not raise its offer to match, saying the deal is no longer financially attractive. For more on this, we're joined by Andrew Dimbert. Andrew, this all started when Paramount launched a hostile takeover bid after Warner and Netflix had a deal. Explain how we got to this point.
Well, it's a stunning move, and there are a lot of moving parts here. But earlier today, Warner Brothers essentially announced that Paramount's offer was superior, as you mentioned, to a previous agreement that it already had with Netflix. So how can Paramount even do this if Warner Brothers already had a deal with Netflix? Essentially, Netflix had a sort of right of last refusal. They had a chance to match or exceed any of Paramount's, or any other company for that matter's, newest bid, now deciding to back out after Paramount upped its original offer to $31 a share. So essentially, since the ante's been upped, so to speak, Netflix is now saying at this new price, it's just no longer a, quote, financially attractive takeover. Wall Street seems to like the move for Netflix, at least. Last I checked in after-hours trading, Netflix stock was up 10%, despite them being the ones to bow out of this deal and not get Warner Brothers.
What comes next for these studios?
Yeah, so it's not just about cost. It's also about content, of course. This is going to reshape not just the movie industry, but many streaming industries as well. For example, Paramount wants all of Warner's operations, which is unlike the Netflix offer. So that includes CNN and Discovery, meaning CNN and CBS would be under the same roof. Executives at Paramount have argued that merging will be good for customers and consumers and the wider industry, but lawmakers and entertainment trade groups have sounded the alarm, warning that a takeover would only consolidate power, a takeover between Warner Brothers and Paramount, leading to rising streaming costs, less players in the game, and there are also antitrust concerns. So this isn't a guarantee that this is going to happen. The Department of Justice has already initiated reviews about this mega merger, and other countries are expected to do the same, Lindsay.
All right, Andrew Dimbert. So not a case closed just yet. Our thanks to you for that. Protests broke out at Columbia University today after Homeland Security arrested a neuroscience major who was accused of being in the U.S. illegally. New York Governor Kathy Hochul accused agents of lying in order to gain entrance to her building because they did not have a proper warrant. Mayor Zohran Mamdani then spoke with President Trump and raised concerns about the arrest. The president told him she would be released immediately. Columbia University, in a statement this afternoon, said the student was indeed released. And we turn now to new developments in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The FBI is preparing to turn over her home to Savannah Guthrie and the family. This as tips continue to pour in. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, police say this video obtained by Fox News is part of the investigation into the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. A Ring camera captured a car about 2.5 miles from Guthrie's home around the time she was taken. It's not clear whether the image has any value, but the sheriff's department is urging homeowners to submit their home security footage. Sources tell ABC News the FBI is preparing to turn over the house to Savannah Guthrie and her siblings, nearly a month after their mother was taken from her bed in the middle of the night. Today, workmen dropped orange barriers to enforce a no parking zone around the house and installed new security cameras. The FBI is now moving its command post from Tucson to Phoenix, where agents will continue to analyze thousands of hours of video and sort through the 1,500 tips that came in after Savannah offered a $1 million reward.
We need her to come home.
The family is hoping all that money will finally convince someone to come forward.
Someone out there knows something that can bring her home.
Our thanks to Aaron for that. Now to the high-stakes talks between the U.S. and Iran in Geneva. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner are trying to convince Iran to accept a nuclear deal amid a massive military buildup of U.S. forces in the region. Could there be progress? Let's get a check-in from our chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell in Israel. Hi, Ian.
Yeah, Lindsay, ABC News learning that the top U.S. commander in the Middle East, Admiral Brad Cooper, briefed President Trump today on potential military options in Iran. That's according to a person close to the president. It comes amid this massive military buildup in the region, the largest we've seen in years. Talks to avert military strikes ending today in Geneva, Switzerland, with Iran saying there was good progress. But differences still remain that could decide whether or not the US goes to war. A US official confirming to ABC News before the talks that Iran is offering to suspend its enrichment of uranium, but for a limited period. Yet the president demanding no enrichment, no nuclear program at all. Iran still insisting it has a right to a peaceful nuclear program. With Iran saying there are going to be more talks next week in Vienna, what they call technical talks, I think the key question tonight, has President Trump heard enough to keep talking? And if not, the risks of war seem to grow. Lindsay?
Ian, thank you. A nightmare situation for a couple in Santa Clarita, California. Their roommate was arrested for allegedly poisoning them. Authorities said that surveillance video captured him spraying an unknown substance on their food. Trevor Alt has those details.
Tonight, shocking footage inside a California home as a couple says this is their roommate in a gas mask covering their food, kitchen, and pantry with insect poison.
We weren't sure if it's like rat poison, wasp spray.
David and Billy Sunhopper say they've had repeated problems with their roommate, 42-year-old Timothy Bradbury. But recently, they say they started feeling sick.
We weren't really sure what it is because we got blood tests drawn, everything.
They say their doctors suggested they might have been poisoned. So they checked out surveillance footage from inside the house, and this is what they saw.
He was spraying stuff all over our groceries, like our fruit, our vegetables, our coffee pot that we use every morning, and our whole pantry full of all of our chips and our cereal, all of our canned goods, our spices, everything.
They called the authorities, and the Santa Clarita Sheriff's Office says when they made contact with Bradbury, he barricaded himself inside, and it took 2 hours before he eventually surrendered and was taken into custody.
Our thanks to Trevor. We're tracking 2 new storm systems making their way east, possibly bringing rain and even a light snow to areas early next week. WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg has the latest forecast. More snow again. Lee, how'd I know?
Yeah, I know. It's just the way the winter goes, but it's not going to be as much. And meteorological spring arrives on Sunday, so there's that. Now, we have one storm that'll start out in the northern plains and move into the Midwest. Some light snow as we go into parts of Chicago by Saturday afternoon. So that streaks eastward, and it looks like we'll have some light snow. It's probably flurries in D.C. and Philly, but I think the snow will actually end up being a little farther north, maybe a coating to an inch in New York City and the northwest suburbs of New York City, but shouldn't be a big snow, some slippery spots, and we'll clear things out by Sunday afternoon. The next storm has the rain-snow line pretty close to Kansas City, St. Louis, and Cincinnati by Sunday night. This heads toward the mid-Atlantic. So it's more snow for Virginia up to D.C. It's close for New York City. Maybe there's some snows across parts of New Jersey. Then that moves out. A more significant storm could bring snow, ice, and rain to the Northeast Tuesday into Wednesday. Quieter after that. Lindsay.
Quiet. We're looking forward to that. We're going to hold it to you, L to the G. Thank you. Coming up, the Supreme Court will soon consider whether people who regularly smoke marijuana can legally own guns. Our Devin Dwyer explores the growing debate over legal marijuana and the right to bear arms. Plus, are you in the market for a new home? Good news, mortgage rates have hit their lowest level in years. And rapper Megan Thee Stallion is adding Broadway actress to her resume. Those details coming up. Welcome back. For nearly 60 years, the possession of guns by users of illegal drugs have been banned by federal law. The Trump administration says it's essential for public safety. Next week, the Supreme Court is considering whether that ban is unconstitutionally broad. It's a high-stakes case involving marijuana and the states that have legalized it in some form. Our Devin Dwyer has a closer look at the case and growing debate over whether cannabis should get a carve-out in gun law.
In the foothills of Pennsylvania's Allegheny Mountains, oil and forestry are big business, Donald Trump is big politics, and for hunters like Rob Green, guns are a big part of local culture.
If you don't support the Second Amendment in Warren County, you probably should leave.
Green is an Army veteran and father of 3, and until earlier this year was the top law enforcement official in the county for more than a decade.
Most crimes that we prosecuted involved drugs or alcohol. I mean, that's a good 85 to 90%.
He also happens to be a user of cannabis, one of 440,000 Pennsylvanians with a state-authorized medical marijuana card.
So how often do you use?
When I was the DA, once or twice every week or two, maybe once a week on an average would be good. I'm not a daily user.
Does marijuana serve a medical purpose for you?
Yes. Yes. If it did not, I would not be able to get a medical marijuana card.
Marijuana as medical treatment has been legal here since 2016, but consuming cannabis also comes with what Green calls an unconstitutional cost.
As of right now, I have 0 firearms.
And why is that?
I could serve 10 years in prison for having a firearm because I am, according to the feds, an illegal user of marijuana. I mean, it's bull.
Congress has prohibited the feds from cracking down on state medical marijuana programs, and President Trump recently signed an executive order loosening restrictions.
It's an honor to do this.
But cannabis is still banned under federal law. And that means 6 million registered medical marijuana patients across 40 states must surrender their Second Amendment right to own a gun, even when they're not under the influence. Pennsylvania gun dealer Tim Parker says the law is still the law.
We have a sign on the outside of the door. We do not like people that smell like marijuana coming into our shop. A lot of times they tell us that they have a license or a marijuana card, and they're legally allowed to have it. I said, well, you're not allowed to come in here. We will not sell you anything.
Parker showed us how gun buyers must attest on a federal form under threat of felony prosecution that they don't use marijuana or any other illegal drug.
So if you check yes, it's an automatic no
correct,
purchase.
Because the federal law, even though in the state of Pennsylvania they made medical marijuana legal, the federal law still mandates that we cannot sell you a firearm.
Since 1998, the FBI says countless drug users have been turned away by gun dealers because of that form, in addition to more than 240,000 customers flagged for drug-related convictions by the background check system. The Trump administration calls the gun ban for drug users a cornerstone of public safety.
Those are the kind of people that shouldn't be carrying a gun because it's all split-second things, and a gun doesn't think for itself. Guns don't kill people. People kill people, not guns.
This is our gun room.
The potential dangers of combining drugs and guns is apparent inside the City of Erie Police Department gun vault, lined with boxes of 700 firearms confiscated in crimes since 2023.
How many of these guns would be associated with drugs?
I mean, so 170-ish that we took them and confiscated them with drugs, but I would probably guess 70% of these probably were involved in the drug chain.
Had some connection to
some
drugs.
Connection, yeah.
Police Chief Richard Laura says medical marijuana is not a top threat, but does pose a danger when combined with guns.
We don't want someone who's under the influence of alcohol or methamphetamine or cocaine or marijuana to be handling a firearm. Obviously, there's some safety issues there.
The Justice Department says it prosecutes 300 cases a year in which a violation of the drug user gun ban was the leading charge. One recent high-profile case involved Hunter Biden, a self-confessed recovering crack cocaine addict who was charged with lying on the federal gun transaction form and obtaining a firearm. So was Ali Hamani of Texas, who the government says admitted to using marijuana every other day while keeping a Glock 9mm pistol in his home. But a federal court said the ban enacted by Congress in 1968 is too broad and unconstitutional as applied.
And it's unconstitutional because, and we're talking about a statute that renders it a felony for a person who is a consumer of cannabis to possess a firearm, whether they're sober or intoxicated, no matter what.
The Hamani decision spawned a rare alliance. The Trump administration, gun safety advocates, and anti-drug groups now appealing to the Supreme Court to hold the line. They say a ban on guns for people who use illegal drugs, including medical marijuana, is rooted in the nation's history.
Back to the days of the founding, we had laws about intoxication and severe intoxication, even surrounding things like alcohol.
And they point out marijuana use has been linked to perpetrators of some of the country's deadliest mass shootings, like the attack in Minnesota last year at the Annunciation Catholic School.
It's not to say that everyone who smokes marijuana is going to have cannabis-induced psychosis, or even the vast majority. Right. But we need a bright line rule here to prevent against the worst possible scenarios that could occur.
I do agree there are certain circumstances where people should not be able to own firearms.
But Green says the dangers of marijuana are overblown.
Cannabis has helped me in a number of ways. I mean, it helps me immensely. It's helped out of a lot of other people, and it has hurt me in zero ways. Are there certain drugs that are so dangerous and addictive that it's not safe for you to have a firearm? Sure. Marijuana is not one of them.
Lots of debate around that. Our thanks to Devin Dwyer for that. The Supreme Court will decide the constitutionality of the gun ban for marijuana users later this spring. Coming up with spring break right around the corner, trips to the U.S. are on a decline. We take a look at tourism by the numbers and check your sleepwear with your bags. The airport that is banning pajamas before you fly. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testified before the House panel today investigating the Jeffrey Epstein case. Clinton spoke to reporters after the closed-door hearing and reiterated that she has never met Epstein and was disappointed that Republicans refused her a public hearing. Former President Bill Clinton is scheduled to sit for a similar deposition tomorrow. We're learning more details after a U.S. citizen was killed and another wounded in a gunfight between Cuban forces and a U.S. registered speedboat. Police in Florida say that the speedboat involved was reported stolen from a Florida Keys marina earlier this week. Cuban officials claim 10 armed men on the boat entered Cuban waters and started shooting at border troops, forcing them to return fire. The clash left 4 dead and 6 wounded on the speedboat. Members of Congress have called for a full investigation. Good news if you are in the market for a home. According to new housing data, the rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage dipped just below 6% for the first time in nearly 4 years. This time last year, mortgage rates were closer to 7%. According to experts, a decrease of each percentage point saves buyers thousands of dollars in costs each year, which could now help bring more buyers off the sidelines. Should pajamas be worn at the airport? Well, Tampa International Airport says emphatically no. In a satirical post, the airport teased a PJ ban. They wrote in part, quote, after successfully banning Crocs and giving everyone the amazing opportunity to experience the world's first Crocs-free airport, it's time to take on an even larger crisis, pajamas at the airport. The madness stops today. And coming up, stunning video shows a skier hanging off of a ski lift. We have the incredible story. And the United States is experiencing a tourism slump. We explore the decline by the numbers. Welcome back, everyone. If you're lucky, you may take some time off in the coming weeks for a little spring break, or perhaps you're now planning your summer vacation. But there's a troubling trend for the tourism industry here at home in the United States. Visitors from around the world are taking their money elsewhere as international tourists have soured on the idea of visiting the U.S. Let's take a closer look by the numbers. 2025 saw a 6% drop in international tourism coming to the U.S. compared to the year before. That's according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. That translates to 11 million fewer visitors this year compared to last. The drop is even more significant when you're talking just about Canadian visitors, which has dropped 28% since a high in 2024. One reason for the decline is a $250 visa integrity fee now required for visitors from some countries like Mexico, India, Brazil, and China. It is a big summer, however, for U.S. tourism, with 11 cities hosting World Cup matches in June and July. But so far, flight data company Cirium is showing a 14.2% decline in July bookings from Europe compared to last year. And it's not just tourists. For the first time in nearly 100 years, more people moved out of the U.S. than into it. The Brookings Institution estimates the U.S. saw net negative migration of 150,000 people in 2025, and they expect that number to drop even further in 2026. And still ahead, the dramatic video of a skier left dangling from a chairlift. And to celebrate Black History Month, we highlight a muralist who's helping to beautify neighborhoods in Los Angeles, one mural at a time. A skier left dangling from a chairlift. The final tower goes up at the World Trade Center, and Burger King's new AI tool, Patty, will soon have it her way. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. Video release reveals a terrifying moment for a skier in Big Bear, California. A skier somehow slipped beneath the safety bar of the lift during their ride, then was left dangling midair as the two other skiers on the lift were hanging on, preventing a dangerous fall for their chairmate. All three skiers reached the unloading station safely. No injuries were reported. Team USA women's hockey captain Hillary Knight has called President Donald Trump's recent comments distasteful. During an appearance on SportsCenter, she said the comment has shifted focus from the women's hockey team's historic achievements at the Milan Winter Olympic Games. In a video that went viral this past weekend, President Trump's comments on a phone call to the men's team went viral.
We're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. Absolutely.
The USA men's hockey team was invited and applauded during Trump's State of the Union address Tuesday. The women's team declined his invitation due to scheduling conflicts. American Express announced their new headquarters in New York City. The company said that they will break ground this spring on 2 World Trade Center, which will become a 55-story tower near the site of Ground Zero. The new building will be the final office tower in the new World Trade Center and represents a milestone for the area that was destroyed on 9/11 nearly 25 years ago. Burger King is launching a new AI coaching tool that will be active in employees' headsets. The AI tool is called Patty and relies on language to instruct employees how to make certain menu items, clean facilities, but also tracks how many times employees say phrases like please or thank you. Managers at Burger King will be able to ask the tool how their location is doing on friendliness. Other fast food chains have tried to integrate AI tools into their systems, but have varied results. 3-time Grammy Award-winning artist and actress Megan Thee Stallion is set to make her Broadway debut this spring. The artist will take on the role as Zidler in Moulin Rouge for an 8-week run starting March 24th and ending May 17th. The score will include Stallion songs like Savage and Hiss. She'll be taking over the role, which is currently played by Bob the Drag Queen. Megan Thee Stallion has previously acted in a movie and appeared in several series. We've all joined in on the snow day fun, but a surprise guest, a baby gray seal, was found on a snowy street in Ocean County, New Jersey, shutting down traffic before waddling away. The police found the pup struggling and brought it to an animal hospital for treatment. Staff there said the 6-week-old baby seal is undernourished, but is now resting comfortably. Black History Month is coming to an end, and as we remember and honor the historical figures who paved the way, we're also highlighting the everyday people impacting their communities. Los Angeles-based artist Mike Norris is merging his advocacy and art to highlight the city he calls home. Here's Morgan Norwood.
Mike Norris is beautifying some of LA's toughest neighborhoods, one mural at a time.
I think I fixed it. It's right there.
Norris painting the final touches on his latest artwork in Compton's South Park, commissioned by Ann One to revamp this court for NBA All-Star Weekend.
All of this is more mental than physical. I have to be in a calm place.
Norris completing the mural in just 1 week.
A Mike Norris week, 80 to 100 hours of work. You got to give the people what they want.
90% of the time, I forget that I'm even painting. Like, wow, I didn't even remember painting that, and that lets me know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do.
The story of Norris's rise in art and his advocacy captured over a decade in the newly released documentary Artfully United.
I'm doing a mural tour called Artfully United, where I do a mural in different hoods all across LA.
Mike has a message of love. It's a message of action. He's a brilliant artist, but he's just as brilliant of an activist.
It's hard to miss Norris's stamp on his native city. 15 of his murals coloring the streets of LA's inner cities with uplifting messages of hope, optimism, and forgiveness.
I want this message to resonate with the people, to build the community back up.
His signature tool in all of his murals is a figure he calls Powerful Paul. As a young child, Norris found his own power in art.
I was born in Watts in the 80s, and that was very traumatic for me. We were actually homeless, and art was a sense of relief for me. I knew that I can create a narrative with this pen and paper of any type of world I want to escape the current world I was in and just create me flying, me living in a big house, me, eating a meal, me just living the life I want to live.
After earning a degree in fashion design, he opened a store on Melrose Ave, making custom paintings and sneakers for stars like Elton John and Michael B. Jordan.
I think one of the craziest projects I've done over the years was doing 16 pairs for Tom Cruise in 2 days.
But 14 years in, Norris decided to transition from entrepreneurship to a new dream.
I became a robot to my art. In 2013, I talked to my wife, and she actually gave me the idea to start doing murals.
A decade later, Norris is now one of 8 muralists chosen to represent the city of Los Angeles with the Cultural Affairs mural for the 2028 Olympics.
The godmothers of Watts, because there's 6 images of women that basically define what Watts is. It shows just that light in the darkness. This neighborhood has a horrible stereotype, but there's still art and there's still beauty within the neighborhoods.
And at the final unveiling of Norris's mural, the message is culture and unity.
I wanted to display that our culture is still here, and they're trying to erase our culture. So I wanted to just show that we can be unified as a people while living in this culture. And I love touching the community. I love just reaching and touching the people doing the murals. I know this is my calling, and I think this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Our thanks to Morgan Norwood. Anderson .Paak is a 9-time Grammy Award-winning producer, songwriting, drummer, and artist, having collaborated with Bruno Mars, Dr. Dre, and Mariah Carey, and K-pop artists like BTS, G-Dragon, and J-Park. .Paak uniquely blends R&B, hip-hop, and K-pop throughout his work. He now makes his directorial debut with the movie K-Pops, a journey to discover the next superstar in a K-pop competition show. Along the way, he learns how to rebuild relationships and unite people through a shared love of music. Let's take a look.
There we go, but to this tempo. Nice. Bass, slide in there. Slow down, Jack. Leave some space for calm. He's our lead. All right, now strings, keys, y'all gonna fall in, but when Kong says, let's get it. I lost my mind.
Anderson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Give us a sense of how you think that K-pop has changed the music industry.
Well, I think that they are having kind of their coming out party. You know, every year it gets bigger and bigger. The K-pop rocket ship has been going with or without people, and it's awesome to see that people are starting to recognize it more, and they have questions, and people are learning more about stuff on both ends. So I think it's awesome.
And along for the ride on that rocket ship with you, father-son duo, your real-life son, Soul, plays your son in this movie, making his on-screen debut. Want to take a look at the clip?
Now, follow me. See these? These are the Avengers of music.
Sick.
Mm-hmm. And if K-pop is about boy bands and girl bands, well, hell, this got to be one of the greatest boy bands ever, the Jackson 5. Yep. To put in your little K-pop terms, Michael Jackson would be the center, the face of the group.
So how did this come about that you actually cast your real son as your son?
He inspired the whole story.
Is that right?
Yeah, he wanted to be a YouTuber and he wanted to be a K-popper. This was during quarantine. He was probably 11, 12 years old in that clip, but he was about 8 years old when the idea came about. And I didn't know about either of those two things. And then I'm looking at his K-pop music and I'm like, okay, this is reminding me of groups like New Edition and SWV, and it's even making me think of Berry Gordy, how he was putting together groups like The Temptations and groups like my mom used to come up on, like Earth, Wind & Fire.
Right.
And growing up, that's how I knew I was a parent, because every time he was into something, I'd be like, okay, now, well, this is where they're sampling from. And I know you know about K-pop, what you know about Tupac? I know you know about BTS, what you know about BET? So it really made me realize, okay, I'm getting old, but also, too, this is a cool, unique opportunity I have to tell a story that blends both sides, my Black culture and my Korean culture, and showing how we have a lot of things in common.
And as you just mentioned, your directorial debut, and you're directing your son.
Yeah.
Was he like any good teenage boy and listening to dad, or he had his own ideas?
Oh man, he definitely had his own ideas, and I had to pivot and change. By the time we were shooting, he was 11 years old, so he went from loving K-pop to loving Slipknot. So I had to switch things up, pivot, just to work with the teenager I was, having on camera. And it was really cool because he really took it seriously. I'm a dad first before anything, but it was really fun to be able to share both experiences, like directing my son and having so much fun with him improving, but then also being a dad, getting to be able to just like hang out with him on set and spend a lot of time with him, which, he's a teenager, he's 15 years old now, so I don't know if I'll ever get that much time with him again.
You yourself are half Korean, half Black. And so how do you go about bringing that aspect of yourself and blending it to the big screen?
Yeah, a lot of the movie is pulled from a lot of unique experiences that I had. I grew up in a Black household. My mom was born in Korea. She was adopted during the war, didn't know her real biological family, but was adopted by Black parents in the military and was raised in LA. And she had me and my sisters, and we grew up in a Black household. And so there's so many nuances with that, growing up in the music, the culture, the food, everything. And then I got reintroduced to my Korean culture by my son's mom, and she's full Korean, came from Korea with no family out here, and now my sons speak the language. Now they're running around, eating all the food, and it's like I get to have both experiences, and I put that all in the movie. I just wanted to be able to tell a new story, a unique story, and I know there's more of those stories out there, and I hope it leads to more in the future.
Obviously, the soundtrack, getting that just right was crucial. Who did you collaborate with?
Man, Dim Joints, who was like one of my, big collaborators since I was working with Dr. Dre, is one of huge collaborators and producers within the K-pop scene right now. He did a lot of the bulk of the music within the original music in the movie and on the soundtrack as well. But I got collabs with Earth, Wind & Fire. My boy Bongo did the Too Bad song with G-Dragon. I got the Free Nationals on there. I got just a bunch of favors, man, from everybody and old friends that I've been working with for years.
Old school
and new school need to know this.
Anderson, thank you so much. What a pleasure to meet you. K-Pops, starring and directed by Anderson Paak, premieres in theaters nationwide Friday, February 27th. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Thank you.
So what is your...